Cool, perfect. So hello, everyone. First of all, I'm very happy to be here. So thank you very much for inviting me. Let me just, perfect. Cool. So I'm here today to talk to you about Qhub. Uh, we just had a release today, and so I'm very very happy to be sharing stuff with you. And you also like to know that we have our beloved PM here in the call. So Darhas is here, and also our project lead. So if you have any hairy questions about clusters, deployment, cloud providers, anything that is like super complicated, just talk to them. Uh, Let me know, and we talk to them. Cool. So perfect. Let's start this then. Cool. So today we're gonna talk a little bit about. First, I'm gonna start telling you a little bit about me. Then I'm gonna tell you a little bit about Quantside, so the company that supports Qhub. Then I will tell you everything about Qhub and everything that is new on the new release today. And then I will show you a few things. It's not necessarily a super powerful demo, but I will just show you a few features of the new release, and then we can have that beloved discussion. Cool. So a little bit about me. So my name is Lais Carvalho, as Rich already mentioned. I am a developer advocate. So for those of you who are not sure what developer advocate is, basically what I do is I liaise between users, engineering, and marketing. So a little bit of like the grease that makes the platform, the tool, in this case Qhub, just a little bit easier to use and also a little bit more stable. So basically, I talk to the users, and then the users tell me with all the with I mean with as much honesty as they can, and then I bring the feedback back to the engineering team, and then we have a little bit of a discussion, and then we try to do the best we can to make sure that everyone is happy. um, so right now, the way that I've been working with Qhub is writing documentation. So we just released a new set of documentation. Um, and some of the stuff that is there, I did it. So if you, after this talk, if you love Qhub and you want to try it and you think that the docs are not amazing, please just write an issue and let me know. And I'll be more than happy to fix whatever it is that you think that you're having difficulties with. Um, and I do also a little bit of the community management. There is this part of talking to the end users. Then I'm passionate about Python, and I am crazy about empowering developers to do as much as they can by themselves. I know that developing is a teamwork. It's a teamwork activity, but I think people should be able to do what they want to do by themselves and share with the rest of the world in the easiest way possible. And that's a little bit of what Qhub does. And then a little bit of the background. So my background is in civil and environmental engineering. I'm finishing my undergrad on IT, and I am a Python newbie. That's it. So a little bit about Quantsite. So basically, what Quantsite tries to do is help the creators and maintainers help companies that use open source software to maintain their platforms and to develop new solutions for their problems using by getting in contact with the creators and maintainers of open source platforms. So we use open source tools 100%. And then just a little bit about where we come from. So our founder is one of the co-founders of Anaconda, and is also the creator of NumPy, SciPy, and Numba. Yeah, his name is Travis Oliphant. Um, cool. So Qhub. So what is Qhub? So Qhub is an open source library that uses infrastructure as code to deploy shared data science environments on premises or on the cloud, basically. So there's two different volumes. So the cloud bit uses Kubernetes, and it's necessary to have a cloud provider. You have an infrastructure that uses Terraform, Helm, and GitHub Actions. And then the on-premises part, you have a structure that is built on top of Ansible and Slurm. So basically, what we like to say is that Qhub is for everyone, for any developer. So if you know enough GitHub and you're happy generating API keys, you should have all it takes to deploy and maintain your own compute infrastructure without the need of a dedicated DevOps team. So basically, DevOps for non-DevOps people. So just a little bit more about what the idea of where QHub came from. So it was born from the need to quickly deploy compute platforms on the cloud. Um, Again, as simple as it could be, uh, making DevOps accessible for everyone. So basically, there you have the infrastructure. So there is a command qhub init that generates that YAML file. There's a configuration file. Then you follow that by a qhub deploy that generates all that infrastructure that you need. And that then deploys a URL on the web browser. You access that URL, and then basically you have your computing platform there. So then here's just the commands that you need to have your computing platform there. Then a little bit about what we did on the last release. So the new things that we have now, we have integration with VS Code using code servers. So basically, before you'd have a JupyterLab um, window, and you'd have to do your coding using the JupyterLab window. But then not all of our users really like Jupyter notebooks. So then we decided to implement a VS Code extension to it, and I will show that to you just a second. And we also changed a little bit of our Dask Gateway implementation, and now you can access your Dask cluster deployed on the cloud from your local computer. Um, there is also integration with CDS dashboarding, so you can build your very pretty visualizations and share that with all the users on QHub easily. Um, you can also connect to QHub now using SSH, and that allows you to use your local preferred IDE. You can use VS Code, PyCharm, whatever you fancy. Um, and you can also now use QHub to test your existing Kubernetes clusters. So there is a new option. Before, you wouldn't be able to do a local deployment. Now you can, and it makes it much, much easier for testing. And we also have added the support for Azure. So on top of Google Cloud Provider, AWS, and DigitalOcean, now we also support Azure. And now, my colleague Christopher Ostrachov will be giving you a demo showing QHub's newest, hottest features.
Hey y'all. So through this, I'll just be trying to show all the new features in the Qhub 0.3 release. So as we expect, you just regularly log in. With the new 0.3 release, one of the things we added here was the ability for username password based authentication. As with the prior release, we have support for generally any OAuth provider. Here I'm just going to log in. And then once we click Start Server, we will see that we're prompted with, by default, when you do a fresh install, two profiles. One is a small instance and another one is a medium instance. But this is all configurable, and you can add additional ones, say a high memory node, one that is a GPU, so that you guarantee a GPU per user. All of this stuff is available when we customize the so once you click Start, all of this stuff is running on Kubernetes. So this is actually spinning up a Kubernetes pod on the cluster and then redirecting the user to the running pod. Just to show this running really quick, the pod that we're running in is Jupyter Ostro C. Okay, so in this demo, I wanted to show what we already have in 0.3, but we've really kind of re-architected behind the scenes how Dask Gateway works here. So first thing I'm going to do is import Dask Gateway, and then you'll notice here that you can connect to the gateway without any arguments. When we cat that, It just shows how all the connection parameters that we're using. So the next thing you can do, you can then customize for all of your Dask workers what environment they're going to run in. At this moment, we only have a default conda environment, but you can imagine additional ones that you might want available in your Jupyter Lab instance and also on the workers that you run. And we found this is actually a pretty difficult situation to be able to sync the environments between Jupyter Lab and Dask itself. Additionally, you can also select where these actual Dask workers run. So you might want to dedicate a GPU per worker, or maybe say 100 gigabytes of RAM per worker. And that's all possible with these cluster profiles that I'll show later. Next, we want to launch a cluster with these given options. And when you make this call, gateway.new cluster, behind the scenes, it is starting up a Dask scheduler, which we see right here. And then very quickly after the fact, we saw this pop up. While we do this, we see in the beginning we have 0 workers, so let's make this interesting and ask for 3. And then while this is happening, currently with the 0.3 release, we have an issue with the dashboard link. And that is if you try to visit it, it will say page not found, and this has to do with traffic and some Dask Gateway, a PR that we need to open about authentication, but I'm going to cheat right now and just make this work for the demo. So I'm going to this new cluster that we created. So the PR we need to add is we need to make it so that we can add this logic to this Kubernetes resource. And once we've done that, if we do a page refresh, we'll see that we're able to access the Dask workers. And we can see, I guess no workers have spun up yet. It still looks like it's 0. And if we look here, we can see that there are 3 Dask workers that are in the pending state. The really neat thing about the work that we've done at Qhub is all of this stuff is auto-scaling, meaning that you only pay for it when the users need the Dask workers. And then once you shut down your Jupyter Lab session, it will auto-delete these Dask workers on the fly. I guess we see they're in the container creating state, so they're still coming up. Pros and cons of auto-scaling is that sometimes you do have to wait 2 or 3 minutes before a new node comes up, and that's really just a balance that you have to do, with the benefit that you can scale to very large node counts very easily. Okay, so we now see that we have 3 workers. We'll also see in the Dask little dashboard that we have these workers as well. Something that I learned recently was that you can take this URL and go to, there is a Dask dashboard URL widget, and you can, if you type in minus this, not including the status part, I believe you hit enter, there we go. If it turns gold, I think it's working. And then we can pull up something, say task stream, and this gives us a view, a pretty graph that's always great for demos, showing that things are working. And we can also see the Dask workers down at the bottom. So let's just give it a little bit of work to do. We need to take the Dask cluster that we created and create a new client. And once we have this new client, we'll then do a just a random Dask array computation that you can find on the Dask tutorial webpage. Um, I really like this feature, how they know the shape of the array before it actually does the computation. Um, Props, I really like that. Then here we can see, again, it kind of computes what the shape is, but it hasn't actually done the computation yet. And once we call compute, we see it do a fancy computation. And I guess I know that the red indicates that it's sending network traffic. And really, for any distributed computation, you want to minimize the amount of network traffic that you perform, um, kind of generally. Okay, so I think that shows the Dask cluster. Once we have this here, you can easily stop your cluster by doing cluster.close. This is how you could manually do that. But I want to show that we don't actually necessarily have to do this. So if we go to our hub control panel and we stop our server, you can see that the Dask scheduler is auto being terminated for us. So, and we also see that our um, Jupyter Lab session is also dying as well. So this is kind of showing the auto cleaning nature of Qhub here. All right. Let me just restart the server because I wanted to show some more interesting things that we can do here. So once we have this up, I wanted to next show the dashboard capability, which is, I'd say, the feature that I'm the most excited about. Actually, right here, what's good? Might as well show we just added VS Code integration. So you have a full-fledged IDE inside of Qhub. There we go. But we can see that we can see all sorts of files. I guess we probably don't have the IPy in B extension, just treating it as regular JSON. But let's look for the text file, and we can just see if we start adding some text and I decide to file save. When we go to our JupyterLab window and we go to hi.text, we'll see that that was added there. Additionally, maybe you might not like the JupyterLab terminal experience, and I know that they have their own terminal that you can interact with here. Another one that's worth mentioning is the video chat widget, and this is integrated with Jitsi. We are not actually on Qhub hosting a Jitsi server, but in this case, you can easily start a chat room with people, and this will connect to the Jitsi server. And then when you allow it, and then, yeah, so full-fledged Jitsi server working here. The reason why we have this is we found it really useful for tutorials where you need to, say, send a piece of text to other users or be able to interact at the same time. And we found this was a lot more flexible than having two tabs and kind of splitting your window in half. Having this nice way to be able to switch it on and off was really useful. So the next thing I want to show is the ability to have a panel visualization going on here. Let's say that I might be trying to actively develop a panel visualization here. So I'm developing inside of a JupyterLab notebook, and then I do the related panel commands, and I can kind of view this panel widget. And I'm like, oh, great, I have spent some time developing this. Now I want to share it with a bunch of my teammates, but I only want to share it with teammates that are in um, my administration group. How do we actually serve this? And that's become a common question that we've heard people ask over and over. So if you go to the Hub control panel, you'll now see that there is a Dashboards button. And when we click Dashboards, I already have one that's currently running, but it's worthwhile to just create a new one. We give it a name, so like My Fancy Dashboard, and then just a nice little description. You can see selected users. We have the ability to control which users we want to share this with, but for now I'm just going to let all users access it, and then I'm going to choose panel, which is based on bokeh, and then I'll do panel.ipynb. And the reason why I'm giving this exact path is we'll notice that this file is panel.ipynb, and it's in our root folder here. So that's kind of how the path we have to give it. Once you do this, you'll see it's spinning up a dashboard called My Fancy Dashboard. You'll see here that there is a dedicated pod running for this dashboard application. And then once we go here, we see our fancy dashboard popping up. Now, the dashboard I'm showing here is pretty ugly, but we've seen people create some really elegant panel visualizations here, giving them dedicated resources and sharing it with their team. Okay, so dashboarding, I showed panel here. I think I forgot to mention, when we click this dashboard, you'll see several frameworks supported here. All of these except for Shiny, I've tested, um, and they all seem to work just fine. I will add that the question might be, do you support dashboarding application X or Y? And really, because of the architecture of JupyterHub, we support anything that will respond to HTTP requests. Anything that acts as a web app will work in this dashboarding framework or JupyterHub in general. And we certainly would love PRs related to this. To me, this shows some of the core features of the user interface. So with that, I'd really like to thank you for your time. And it's been great to show off the new features of 0.3 and just where Qhub is in general. So thank you.
So then to conclude the presentation today, well, Qhub is a open source tool that allows you to build and maintain your computing infrastructure. It eases collaboration for team collaboration, uses infrastructure as code, um, GitHub Actions to automate the CI/CD deployment. There's Kubernetes and Terraform for non-DevOps people, and we have a bunch of cool new stuff on the new release. That's it. That's me for now. I hope you had a little bit of fun, and thank you.
All right, thanks, Lais.